Okay, hi, my name is Stephen Cairns, and today I'm talking on the topic of breed-specific legislation. First, let me preface by explaining what breed-specific legislation actually is. According to the Michigan State University College of Law, breed-specific legislation is a statute or regulation that is directed towards one or more specific breeds of dogs. For example, saying that all pit bulls must be muzzled on public property is an example of a law that is breed-specific. My opponent's main claim was that breed-specific legislation causes more harm than good for dogs and people involved with dogs. Her first secondary claim was that breed-specific legislation negatively affects the lives of dog owners. Her second supporting claim is that breed-specific legislation negatively affects those dogs already deemed dangerous. And her third supporting claim is that this sort of legislation puts other breeds in jeopardy. I'd like to start with the first claim that says breed-specific legislation negatively affects the lives of dog owners. My opponent suggests that breed-specific legislation would significantly affect people with service dogs, so much to the point that they would have to give up their dog or become homeless. According to dogtime.com, popular breeds for service dogs include German Shepherds, Labrador Retrievers, and Golden Retrievers. It also lists popular breeds for each type of service dog, for example, police dogs, guide dogs, therapy dogs, etc. There's no mention of pit bulls, the most common breed affected by breed-specific legislation, as a popular service dog. And Rottweilers, another breed commonly affected by breed-specific legislation, are only used as police dogs. German Shepherds are also affected by breed-specific legislation, and they are widely used as service dogs, but according to disasterdog.com, German Shepherds are only restricted in 2 cities in the entire United States. These are Fairfield, Iowa, and Linville, Tennessee. To claim that breed-specific legislation significantly affects service dogs is simply irrational because it affects such a minute population of dog owners. My opponent's second claim was that breed-specific legislation negatively affects dogs that are already deemed dangerous. According to the United States Humane Society, there are an estimated 4.5 million dog bites each year, and according to attorney Kenneth Phillips of dogbitelaw.com, pit bulls and Rottweilers account for 75% of all reported canine-inflicted human deaths in the past 2 decades. With these facts in mind, it can be easy to see that breed-specific legislation is an effective strategy to try to reduce the number of injuries from dangerous breeds. My opponent argues that these breeds will be discriminated based on their breed alone. She gives an example of a dog that apparently looked like a pit bull that approached an officer and was shot after it lunged at him. Upon watching the released dashcam footage for myself on StarTelegram.com, the dog was seen for a brief moment wagging its tail near its owner, but rapidly approaching the officer in a different manner outside of view of the dashcam. To claim that this dog was discriminated because it looked like a pit bull, when in fact there was no evidence that said what type of dog it was, does not advance the argument that breed-specific legislation causes more harm than good for dogs. The officer shot the dog because he thought that his life or the lives of others, perhaps bystanders, were threatened, not because some law says this is a dangerous dog. My opponent's third claim was that breed-specific legislation puts other breeds in jeopardy, and that slowly all breeds will be restricted. This is a very large assumption that has no evidence to back it up, and as it stands right now, no single breed is banned or restricted completely in any state in the United States. Breed-specific legislation is only confined to certain jurisdictions, which according to dogbitelaw.com contains a few hundred jurisdictions. I don't think there's a single person in this room, except for maybe one, that thinks that every single dog breed will be restricted or banned. As it is, my opponent's claim is weakened by the fact that breed-specific legislation causes no harm to dogs that are restricted. A definition of a restricted, for example, brought about by breed-specific legislation would be, requiring pit bulls to be on a short leash while in public. As you can see, this inflicts no harm to the dog or the owner, as my opponent's main claim states. It might be a minor annoyance to both, but that's about it. So in conclusion, let me recap on my presentation. My opponent's main claim is that breed-specific legislation causes more harm than good for dogs and people involved with dogs. In this, she says that breed-specific legislation negatively affects the lives of dog owners. It negatively affects those dogs already deemed dangerous, and it puts other breeds in jeopardy. My response to these claims were that breed-specific legislation won't negatively affect dog owners because, for the example of the service dogs, these breeds that are restricted are not widely used service dogs. And second, breed-specific legislation would not negatively affect those dogs already deemed dangerous because dogs aren't discriminated and a bill or law inflicts no harm to these dogs. And thirdly, it does not put other breeds in jeopardy because there's simply no evidence or even a logical reason why all breeds will become restricted. I hope I have given you enough reason to present why breed-specific legislation is not harmful to dogs or dog owners. Thank you.
All right, Stephen, the topic's nicely identified. You lay out what the secondary claims are. You go through them very thoroughly. I thought your analysis on the first point was very clear. You found some additional information to suggest that the vast majority of dogs that are in service categories don't fit into the categories that the advocate's talking about. The only thing that I think is missing on the first couple of points is really a discussion of the advocate's evidence on those points. I thought you did a good job in discussing the lack of evidence on the third point, but on the first 2 points you're relying primarily on your counter evidence on those points. And I thought you had very good counter evidence on all of those points. Everything is signposted clearly. The problem with talking about the video is, of course, that we don't all get to see the video, and independent analysis is not being cited here. I still don't know whether or not the officer was ruled justified in doing this, whether or not there was a lawsuit that was involved, and we don't even know if that event occurred in a place where there were restrictions on specific dog breeds. But I do think that you have a legitimate argument here that the officer didn't shoot the dog because it fit into the dog breed legislation. He shot the dog because he thought the dog was about to attack him. And that's a good countercausal argument. All right, and I thought you had a very nice summary at the end of the speech, too. Thank you.